Hello and welcome to this episode of Beat Teacher Burnout. You're not going to believe what we're going to hear today. It is the most exciting, inspirational and innovative, if that's a word, daring way of doing school leadership that I have met to date, I think. So rather than me chatting on, I want to welcome Sara and ask you, Sara, if you can tell everybody a little bit about you, and then we will hear about what you're doing in your school.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me on, Marina, as well. I really appreciate it. So I'm Sara Rider. I'm the head teacher of Monteagle Primary School, which is a three-form entry primary with nursery and additional resource provision. And we are based in the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham, which is right on the outskirts of East London. So yeah, I've been the head here since 2019, and previous to that, I was head teacher at another local primary school as well. So, yeah, been doing it for a little while now, but always worked within the same local authority. Love it, wouldn't work anywhere else. Brilliant place to be. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Oh, well, welcome. And I guess everyone's going to be wondering, what is it that you have put into your school that is so daring and so, I think, inspirational? And I'm sure your staff say, wow. Do you want to tell people about this?
Yeah, so after COVID, which, we'll just call the time that shall not be named, and everyone was working at home and working really differently, in September 2020, we initiated giving people what we've called Development Day. Development Day essentially is 3 hours worth of PPA or 2.5 hours, however we've worked it. And the rest of the time that is given over to professional development. And we give that to everybody, no matter what position they work in within the school. And that day can be taken at home. It's completely protected. It doesn't change. And yeah, so people are out within their year group. So there's 3 of them out at the same time. We do 2 year groups a day. No year group is at home on a Monday or a Friday. So it's midweek, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And during that time, the children have both their PE sessions. They have a music teacher, a French teacher, computing, and an extra maths session. So all of those things are covered by a specialist, which has been amazing. So yeah, and all done within people who are already at the school.
Wow. Okay. So the first thing that comes to my mind is how on earth do you afford it? But maybe before we ask that, is what is the impact on your staff and why did you set it up? I suppose. What did you see in doing that is so amazing?
So we had started our work around workload and wellbeing back in 2019 when I arrived, and the initial piece of work we did was around the feedback and marking using the DFE workload and wellbeing toolkit. And that really got me thinking that in the grand scheme of things, we really do need to be focusing on what I would call proper well-being, not just, initiatives like I'm going to stick some donuts in the staff room and, we'll let you dress down on a Friday, that type of thing, which are a little bit gimmicky. So we'd started doing what I would say was really meaningful work in sort of 2019, and then COVID hit the following year. And obviously everyone started to work at home, and I was talking to you a little bit in our pre-chat about the fact that I have never been so proud of the team as I was during that point, because at a period of time, I think, where people could have used it as an excuse in some ways, that they became so resourceful and innovative. They were coming up with different ideas. They were researching things of how we could support, children and families, how we could check in with our vulnerable children, how they could open themselves out, more to our community. We organised things like food banks, and that was all because people had time and space at home to think more creatively. So in about the June or the July, when things were starting to open up again, I started to really think about what would that look like if we could give staff that time and space moving forward, knowing that everyone was coming back to work full time and we would all be in the building together again, and things like that. And we already had a core team of people that were running the PPA sessions and things like that. And it was spread out over the course of the week. And, you've been a deputy head, you understand timetabling, it's an absolute nightmare. And actually, I thought there must be a more simple way of doing this, using the people that we've already got. And I thought, I've got to put some trust back in people, because I trusted them so much when they were at home and I wasn't physically in the building to be in control of things at times either. So why wouldn't I carry on doing that? So I created this. I had this idea about 3 o'clock in the morning when we do all of our best thinking about using a time and space each week which would be completely protected, where teachers could work with their year groups and they could work from home as they chose to. And they would have a protected day every week where part of that would be for their own PPA, which would be completely protected. And then the other part would be for their own either leadership, whatever role they were doing, or for their own professional development. And it's been really transformational. And the idea behind it within the policy, and the policy's developed over the last 5 years, is that if you've got an appointment that needs to be taken, I mean, again, it's so difficult. You get those requests for leaves come in and you think, oh, right, this one's out because they've got dentists and you've got this, you've got that. And I said, I know that everyone has things like that to do because sometimes you just can't help it. You can't always get the Saturday morning appointment. You can't always get the 5 o'clock appointment. But if you give people that day and you say to them, you need to try and use this time, if you do need to pop out and do something, and people have really got behind that, so things like ad hoc doctor's appointments, ad hoc dentist appointments, those type of things, people now take during that time, which means we get less requests for leaves. It almost halved our 1-day ad hoc absences, those periods of time sort of just before Christmas where people are starting to flag a little bit, particularly that part after February half term to April where people just like, this is, we're getting coughs and colds and, all of that. And people almost think, right, if I get to that point in the week, I know I've only got to get to a Wednesday, for example. So I'm in for 2 days, but then I've got that rest and then I can just settle a bit. And then I've got 2 days. It makes such a difference, and what it has done as default is I've managed to get a full-time teacher back in every classroom. So I don't have any job shares across the school anymore because people know if they're coming back full-time, they've got a day that they can use, for themselves a little bit as much as anything else. It just gives you that time and breathing space. And that's made a difference as well, is you're giving people that flexible working opportunity. Um, and some people have come back part-time and up their days very quickly. But yeah, it's been really transformational, I think, for, cutting down ad hoc absences, making sure people feel heard. I think that's been a big thing as well. And one of the key things I think that's come out is it's given people time to develop themselves as teachers and leaders. So I think I mentioned to you earlier, we've had in between 14 to 16 members of staff who have all completed MPQs within the last year. And those MPQs are quite research heavy. There's a lot of reading that needs to go with them. There's the assessment week. And no one wants to do that at 8 o'clock after you put the kids to bed. No one wants to do that on a Sunday where your friends might be popping up to the pub or you've got a swimming lesson to get to or whatever. But you can do that on a Thursday afternoon when you're a bit more settled and you've got time and space. And putting that time back into people's professional development, I think you get it back tenfold. When you put trust in people, it comes back in droves. And I think that's really important. Yeah. So that's where we are.
Wow. Well, I mean, the research on when staff feel that there is trust in the institution is huge, obviously, in terms of their creativity, their resourcefulness, their productivity, all these different things, elements of well-being, if you like.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're giving your teachers this day to really sort of invest in them. And what about you? What about your leaders? How are you managing with that?
So the leadership, we do exactly the same. So currently my leadership team, I've got me, there's 2 deputies, my inclusion lead, and I've got a teaching and learning lead. And we all work in exactly the same way. So we all rotate on our days. For me personally, my day always works better at the end of the week. I always find that I have to do that paperwork at the end because what I don't want to do is have that hanging over me on Saturday and Sunday, that type of thing. So I'll plan in all of my meetings with like HR and finance and all those things that I could, quite frankly, I've put off during the week. And I tend to do all of that. So I'll sign off all the order forms and do all of those things. And it also gives me, and I'm really open about this with my staff. So my little girl's 3.5. And on a Friday, it means I can take her to nursery and I can pick her up. And I make that really clear to other people that, if they've got children, that's what I expect them to do as well. If you've got a dog, I expect you to take it, go out and have a walk and take those, take that breather for yourself, and it's been really transformational because I think people, teacher burnout's really real. And I think and it feels more heavy and difficult at the moment. And I certainly feel that as a leader. I think, the way that, and we can talk about school funding, it's a completely separate issue, but there are a lot of really heavy decisions that we're having to make at the moment, I think, as school leaders, where it feels that you're making decisions that aren't best for the children. You're making things that are financially good decisions because you need to cut and save money. But for me, having that space and time to reflect and really look at things means that I'm not making rash decisions, and I'm giving myself that breathing space that I need as well, which I think is really important. And that's what I expect my senior leads to do as well, is to do that for themselves.
I love that. And the
Yeah.
thing that comes to my mind is I recently spoke at a conference to some head teachers, and I told them lots of stories, gave them lots of research and about what helps both them and their staff to beat the stress and the overwhelm, and some strategies. And the one thing that every single one of the feedback that I got quite a few people came and spoke to me after it, was they'd never thought of. I told them a story about a teacher, a head teacher who was really just reacting every day to all the sort of, the firefighting. And when they took one morning out every week to
Mm.
do it was actually their most valued strength, all the planning and the sort of forward thinking and all the strategic stuff. They discovered that that morning enabled them to thrive through the rest of the week in an extraordinary way. And that was the one bit that all these head teachers clung on to from my talk, interestingly. It was almost like because someone had done it and it worked, had permission. But they were saying, oh gosh, do I trust my team? Yes, I do trust my team. Yes, they would manage.
Yeah,
And there's a very, very powerful message that you're giving your staff, isn't it? About, I'm not here, but that's okay because I trust you.
absolutely. And I really think, I think maybe it's a thing about being a head teacher. There's a big part of it, I think, where it's caught up in your own ego and your own self-importance. And actually, your school shouldn't fall apart when you're not there. And actually, I think that's a sign of actually quite poor leadership. If the school can't run without you, then you're holding everything too tightly. And
Yeah.
you are caught up, I think, in your own idea of I am the most important person in the school. And actually, in some ways, you should be the least important person in the school. And I always make it very clear that I'm always the point of escalation, not the point of initial contact, because you've got the answers yourself. And if you put freedom onto people to make their own decisions based on what's best within the remit of your policies, and I would say that as a head, the idea of if your policies are tight and your culture is right, and I think it all comes down to trust and culture. But if you've got the foundations there with your key policies that are read, that are understood, and your messaging is clear, then you should be able to, at points, you should be able to step back and say, you know what to do, and you put that back on people. And I think from a well-being point of view, that makes a big difference as well. And I think, you know, you can't underestimate what a good culture does in a school. And I think that that's because if you've got a culture of trust, and these are our values in school as well, and we developed these as a group a couple of years ago, and our values are trust, hard work, and respect. And we expect that of our parents, we expect that of our children, we also expect that of each other and ourselves. And I think if that is your culture, then you should always be able to remove yourself slightly to think everyone knows what they're doing. And for me,
Yeah.
that lowers my stress level because I haven't got to worry. I don't have to talk to my deputy heads, for example, about, "Well, what are you doing today? Where are we?" Because we had a meeting at the beginning of the week and everyone knows what they've got to do and everyone stays in their lane and we don't need to cross over and have all this miscommunication. Everyone knows what their roles are. Their roles are really clear, and then we can just get on and we can do that and we can be strategic and move forward. And I think that makes a massive difference for people as well.
Yeah. But I would add on to what you've said about the trust, but you're also putting in a lot of investment resources into your staff developing themselves. So you're saying to them, I want you to become a better leader. I want you to invest so that you are more competent and you can climb and all of that sort of thing. So as well as trusting them, you're investing in them so that they can have the skills so that you can move away, which I guess as a head, that reduces your stress, as you say, but also it's enabling them to grow and to become the best version of them. And wow, Gustav, so we have got to just ask, how do you afford to do this?
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's the difficult one. So it we're quite fortunate because I do have time to look at the budget quite frequently. We've been really lucky in the fact that we've had a carry forward over the last couple of years. So I will preface everything by saying
Hmm.
we've always managed to carry a surplus, but the last 2 years have been really difficult. The increases to NI, to teachers' pensions. Most of my teachers are on a UPS3 with a TLR. The average cost of a teacher in my school at the moment is £79,000 with on costs, which is huge. Because we're all on in a London pay. So it's difficult. And the way that we've had to do that is we've had to be really strategic about, okay, so what are the necessities? What do we actually need? And actually what we want is the best teachers in the classroom teaching the children in the best way possible. So if that means that we have to nip and tuck in other places, then that's what we've done. So I don't set a 3-year budget. I've looked very much like year to year. So I know that I've been able to protect it for this year. I've worked out some creative ways that I'll be able to do it next year. You know, if people leave, for example, because they're moving on for promotion, I won't necessarily replace in the same capacity. So my deputy head's here. He's gonna get a really big head now, but he's actually going on to be a head teacher, and I'm super proud of him. He's done his MP. I know he's looking at me as to say, Sarah, just be quiet. But I will talk about him even though he's here. So he's actually moving on to become a head, which again is amazing. I'm really proud. But my teaching and learning lead can step into an acting role there, but I'm not replacing her role. So what that's been able to allow me to do is to create some smaller posts beneath that to save larger salaries, because I'm very aware that I'm the most expensive person in the school and then underneath that my senior team. So I've tried to decrease my inner senior team to save some money because I'd rather put money back in on the ground. And I think that's the most important thing. We've had to look at shuffling staff around, support staff, as support staff have left. And I've always been really open with the teachers about that. If we want to protect the time, something else has got to give. So it may mean that you don't have as much in class support. And I think if you're honest with people about that and say, if you want this, this can't happen as well. And people have been really responsive to that, and already when we're talking to the year group leads, they're thinking, right, well, actually what we need to do is we need to look and dig a lot deeper into what interventions are actually going to make the most difference. If we've only got one person between 3 classes, how are we going to attack that? And then we've had really big conversations about actually what does our universal offer look like within the classrooms. So we're really talking about adaptive practice and teaching, because they're all going to have to adapt. If you want something that's protected and really good, you need to move it. But it is about open, honest conversations. It all comes back again, like I said, to hard work, trust, respect. It's your culture that underpins everything that we do. And people, if you involve people in the conversation, they've often got really good ideas. So yeah, I reckon I've definitely got a plan for next year. I think there's a plan there for the following year as well. And in year 3, who knows what it will look like, because that's like, it's like pulling, it's like sand, isn't it? It's, you just think, well, you don't know. It's unpredictable. It's like the weather. So yeah, that's how we've run it. Yeah, that's how we run it.
Fascinating. So, do you have a lower than average teaching assistant sort of
In the main
ratio, I suppose?
Yeah, so in the mainstream, we probably do. We've we're in an area where, so I think I mentioned it, we've got an additional resource provision. So we cater for 36 children with autism, of varying needs. We've got our ARP that we call it is one of the biggest, I think, nationally. So it's 36 children. But because the school's very inclusive, we get a lot of children that come in through the mainstream who want to access that provision, and we do give them that. So if you looked in the mainstream, they're probably in Key Stage 2, for example, there's 4 TAs across the 4 year groups, which I think is more and more common, to be honest. We've managed to maintain one in each class in Key Stage 1 and reception. How long we'll be able to do that for, I don't know at the moment, but I think the level of need of the children in Key Stage 1, you don't want to ever make things where they're at an unsafe level. But yeah, we've definitely had to pull back over the years. We've been really fortunate where we are with the funding that we get, but the funding isn't there anymore. So I think, yeah, it feels very tight in Key Stage 2 next year, very tight, less so in Key Stage 1. But I think that may shift at points as well. But you have to manage these things, don't you?
So it's not all easy, but it's working. It's working. And for me, the key piece of research that I found recently was that when the teacher is doing well, sort of mentally, physically, emotionally, their students do achieve up to 20% better. Now, we know that schools are under a lot of pressure to drive, standards and achievement and everything. But actually, it's so obvious, isn't it? The impact on a staff member feeling good about being valued, and you've talked about them being heard and listened to and trusted. They are going to be more creative. They're going to be more energetic, aren't they? Which is so much what the research shows, and more productive. What do you see on a day to day as the benefits, the sort of wider benefits? Obviously, I think you mentioned to me before that your staff absence is lower, your sickness.
Yep.
Yeah. Staff absence is low, just
Yeah.
wider. Yeah.
So the staff absence, so teacher absence is low, and it's historically been low over the last sort of few years. Before that, we had a lot of ad hoc absences here and there. I think it's really beneficial that every child has a full-time class teacher, which I completely understand as a mum myself is really difficult. But again, because you're giving people some flexibility, I think that helps. So they've got that consistency all the time. What I would say is that because the teachers are settled and everything, I mean, I'm sitting in an office that is in the busiest part of the school at the moment, and you don't hear there's no chaos, there's no ruckus anywhere, and all of our year sixes have literally just walked past the window because they're going out to practice their year six production, and they know how to move around the school. The expectations are there. What I would say is that even on the day where their teachers aren't in the building, the respect and the level of trust that they have for the people that are coming in, bearing in mind they're taught by 4 or 5 teachers that day, right the way from year 1 all the way through to year 6, the children have adapted so quickly to it, and the level of respect that they have for those members of staff and their class teacher, you wouldn't know a difference. And I think that that's a really powerful and positive thing that's happened in school. So I think that it's really elevated those out of class teachers to they're on the same level, which I think in some schools isn't always the case. People find it really difficult covering classes. It was never something that I'd want to do as a teacher. And actually the team that work together to do that have got that nailed. And I think that has made a difference. I just think people are fresher. I think that's what it is. And like you said, it gives them time to be a bit more creative. And we certainly see when we walk round on our learning walks, and when we talk to children through pupil voice, that the children are happy. And I think that makes a difference. And, they love their class teachers. They love being in school, and we get overwhelmingly positive feedback from the children about all of the subjects, and especially about their class teachers, which I think is testament to the fact that their teachers often, I'm not going to lie, there are periods of time where we are all exhausted. I mean, particularly at the end of the autumn term. But I think, on a general day-to-day level, people are pretty fresh and with it, which I think really helps. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you're a very brave head teacher, because you really are trusting all your staff to use that time
Yeah.
to the best use, really, aren't you? But you're talking about so many becoming MPQ sort of holders and all this sort of thing. And I just want to celebrate with you how lovely it is to hear a head teacher who's been so brave to put something in place. And I would love one day to get one of your teachers on to talk to them about the impact for them.
Yeah.
Be really interesting, wouldn't it? As a sort of balance to this, maybe.
Oh, I'm sure there are plenty of that would love it. There are plenty that would do it.
Right. Well, watch this space. I will ask, maybe a couple of them could come on and have a chat on here, because I think being a head teacher these days is really hard, really, really hard. And the pressure is enormous. So if there are ways that we can encourage leaders to perhaps do it differently and dare to be different, then there's hope that less staff will leave, because that's what worries me. We're losing so many staff, both leaders and teachers, and we're losing them too fast. So thank you, Sarah, for being so courageous and daring to be different. You have a very lucky staff.
Thank you very much. Well, no, I'm very lucky that they're here, because, as I said, I wouldn't be able to do my job unless they're doing theirs well, would I? So, yeah, it's all kudos to them, really.
Goes two ways, probably. Hey, well,
Yeah.
if people want to sort of find out more about you, Sarah, where would they go?
They can go onto my LinkedIn. That's absolutely fine. So it's Sara Rider. I'll pop up. So yeah, more than welcome for people to contact me on there, and then I can share my details with them. Any policies that we've got, because I do think that that is key, is making sure that you've got all the backup there. It's the system. It's, I know it sounds quite airy fairy, but the systems and structures that are beneath it, that's the hard work. So yeah, if anyone's interested in that, I'm more than happy to share anything that we've got. More than happy for people to come and visit us here at Monteagle. It's not a problem at all. The door's always open.
Lovely. Well, thank you. And thank you for the time you've given to do this as well.
You're more than welcome. I'll go and treat myself to a cup of tea.
Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.